This is the Bobby Moore Communications Network. Freedom of speech. Use it or lose it. And greetings, friends around the world, whenever and wherever you may be. This is Bobby D. Moore. The discoveries of science have often revealed realities quite contrary to the casual observation and the so-called common sense. We now know, for example, that the earth is indeed round, and that it revolves around the sun. Neither of these facts was apparent from the common sense observations of the 12th century. Since then, the entire pyramid of accumulated fact and theory, which has created the foundation of the modern world, has resulted from a new and specific way of thinking. That is, the scientific method. And the entire concept of the scientific method rests upon the more basic concept of objectivity. If objectivity is not attainable, then the entire edifice of science as we have come to know it dissolves into mush. After more than half a century of dedication to the idea of objective reality, I have come to question the possibility of it, and thus the validity of the scientific method itself. One could go so far as to assert that every single piece of data processed by the human mind is rendered subjective by that very fact, and that contrary to common sense observation, there is no such thing as a commonality of human experience. I repeat, objective observation, scientific or otherwise, becomes impossible, since the very fact of the observation makes it subjective. Now this is dangerous thinking, scientific heresy. Go a step farther, and you can deny the existence of the entire material universe. Well, the paragraphs I just read to you I wrote 2 decades ago, at least. They were written at a time when I still had some faith in the institutions of my time and at least some of the people around me. During the past dozen years, however, conditions have changed so drastically on a personal, national, and international level until I find myself almost faithless regarding these people and in these institutions, and almost totally devoid of trust. As a people, as a nation, you have become decadent, lazy, selfish, greedy, totally dishonest, liars, thieves, and killers. Good has become bad, right has become wrong, and truth is hated and feared. Up is down and inside is out. You now thrive on the rotted remains of what was once a potentially great nation, which was based upon the concept of individual liberty. My friends, respect for individual liberty is out the door. The freedom Americans once enjoyed is a thing of the past, and many of the rights you were guaranteed under the Constitution have been usurped by a tyrannical and dictatorial elite. And over the years, I watched all this happen, and yet as I watched it happen, I denied the reality of it. I kept the childlike faith that somehow things would right themselves, that somehow sanity would return. I was wrong. Things have not righted themselves. Sanity has not returned. The first part of this essay, the part about objective reality and so forth, was written when I still had faith enough in the human race to believe that it was possible to build a philosophy on rational thought. That was the basis of my concept of the higher order, a new and beautiful philosophy in which people functioned rationally, with a bare minimum of emotional and superstitious nonsense to clutter their thinking. Well, time has forced me to accept the fact that such a concept, noble though it may be, cannot be put into action quickly enough to save our people from themselves, if indeed anything can be. Its success and implementation would depend upon a level of comprehension which is simply not present in the minds of the common people. All relevant factors taken into consideration, it is clear that the dumbing down process continues to proceed at an alarming rate. Powerful forces at work do not want a nation of intelligent, independent thinkers. Thus it appears that it would be very difficult indeed to significantly influence the masses through the conduits of rational thought. For the time being at least, forget it. We will approach them through the tried and true emotional channels. Now this has been a tough decision for me to make. That is, the idea of attempting to communicate through what I call emotional channels. All my life I have studied the sciences, and one doesn't learn science through emotional channels. You learn it by careful observation and precise communication. To my mind, emotionalism was just a hindrance to learning and understanding, which were the object of my time and attention. Everything I had learned from childhood to adulthood had come to me through my senses, not through some kind of inspiration or revelation, divine or otherwise. Because of this, I made the very serious mistake of assuming that this was the only means of communication possible. As a matter of fact, it had been the only means available to me since I had deliberately shut myself off from all other possibilities. You can do that, you know, and I had done a very good job of it. The result was that I was less than half alive, and I didn't know it. Then, during the cold winter of 1985, my mother died. She burned to death in a house fire. She was 86. This was the most profound emotional event of my life. As a result of it, I made the recording, Does God Exist?, which has since been widely distributed. Several remarkable and unexplainable events took place which prompted me to make this recording, one of which was what appeared to be a totally non-verbal communication which I received. It didn't come to me audibly, it was rather a sudden and very clear understanding. It completely bypassed my ordinary thought channels. Now, you may choose to describe this happening with some term other than emotional communication. Maybe you'd like to term it spiritual or even a revelation from God. But whatever you choose to call it, it happened. I know it happened. I was there. It happened to me. The point I'm leading up to is this. If there is to be a meaningful change in the lives of our people, in time for there to even be a chance to restore the greatness that once was America, it has to happen fast. We can't wait for the decades required to build a new educational system and a whole new social structure to replace the previous one which was systematically destroyed. We can't wait for ordinary verbal communication to do the job. The people must be jump-started. They need a hot wire to heaven. A rational approach is too late. We must approach them from an emotional standpoint. Whatever changes take place in their lives are going to have to be initiated by an external force. The simple fact is, they will not, they cannot do it on their own. I've never been a flag waver, but I will tell you this. During the past 4 years, I have come to realize what a precious and remarkable set of documents we have as the basis for our national government. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States, and the Bill of Rights. Now, I know many of you out there are like I was. You're too busy to take the time to familiarize yourself with these documents. I urge you, I implore you to do whatever you have to do to make the time to sit down and not just read, but study them. For without the freedom which they guarantee, there would be no religious freedom, no freedom of speech, no freedom of the press, no freedom to peaceably assemble, and all this is covered in just the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights. It's just one little paragraph, about 3 lines long, but what a profound and powerful statement it makes. Amendment 1 to the Constitution of the United States of America. It goes like this. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. As I look at it now on my monitor, it's so small, just these little lines. But think of the lives that have been lost on the bloody battlefields of history to preserve those little lines for us here today. And if you're like me, you have taken the freedoms enumerated in those 4 lines for granted. You don't miss the water till the well runs dry, do you? The freedom well in America is running dry. No matter what your religious persuasion, whether you be Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, Lutheran, Catholic, Pentecostal, New Ager, or a member of the Church of Elvis, it doesn't matter. If you have no religious persuasion at all, if you are atheistic or agnostic, it doesn't matter. The fact is, your freedom to choose to be and think is at stake. I'm speaking to every single one of you. In his recent farewell address to Congress, Senator Ron Paul made some statements which really hit home to me. He reminded us that this government was designed for a population of virtuous individuals. And it is my belief that only by returning to virtue in the lives of each and every one of us can it be reclaimed. And we don't have time to take the slow route to re-educate the decadent masses. That's why I'm saying what we need is a hot wire to heaven to help bring this about. The people need a powerful, life-changing stimulus above and beyond themselves to put them on the path to virtue. A simple analogy might be the old-fashioned Holy Ghost revival. You know, when I was a kid back in the East Texas piney woods, evangelists would pass through periodically and hold revivals at the local churches. These fellows were usually pretty tough on the members of the congregation, you know, pointing out all their sins and transgressions and reminding them just how close they were to the burning coals of hell. Well, you see, the evangelist could get away with all this because he was only going to be around for a few services, and the members of the church couldn't fire him like they could the regular preacher. Well, I expect a lot of them breathed a sigh of relief when the evangelist left. I also believe that many of them tried to live more virtuous lives as a result of these churches, their ministers, and the evangelists. In fact, I don't think there's much doubt of it. The evangelist thing was played out on a vast scale in the 50s when the big tent revivals came through. Preachers like Oral Roberts, Jack Coe, and A.A. Allen would set up their big tents, and thousands of saints and sinners alike would show up night after night for healing and salvation, and some maybe just to see the show, for indeed they were shows. And from my point of view, they had quite a bit of entertainment value. As a child, I viewed them with awe. As a young man, I considered them to be hoaxes. And now I view them as desirable, perhaps even necessary. One of the greatest objections I had to them and to their Christian religion in general was its use of guilt as a tool of manipulation. I've never liked that. But what we're facing today is far more serious. We, my friends, are facing the complete and total loss of a free America. Perhaps it has never been as free as some of us have imagined, or would like to have it have been. But in our present situation, we do not have time to quibble over minor points and technicalities. We are facing complete totalitarianism, worse than anything in previous history. Worse than Nazi Germany, worse than the gulags of Soviet Russia, worse than the Roman Catholic Church at its worst, worse than the ancient Rome in its most decadent phase. At this moment in time, we still have enough freedom left under the First Amendment to create a powerful movement protected by it. But time is short. 4 years from now, we will not possess the same degree of freedom we do now, unless we take the offensive and exercise that freedom to the greatest possible extent. In this case, we have the high ground morally. We must realize that, and we must take full advantage of it. Again, I repeat, we do not have time to re-educate the population in an attempt to turn them into creatures of reason. We must use a more direct approach the jump start I recommend, the hot wire to heaven. Will it work? Let's try it and see.